if you look at the other two videos that I've made, the one on the freedom model and the one on choice and responsibility, I think what starts to emerge, it does for me anyway, is this idea of wanting to have compassion for the self that created those untrue limiting assumptions in the first place. If we go back to the freedom model, what you'll remember is that what often triggers the negativity bias-based interpretations are moments of threat, moments of danger. And as we get to understand more and more about the part of our brain that houses that threat system, the amygdala, there's often very little choice in that moment that we have. We come up with something that is purely based on getting us through the moment, surviving, getting through it, getting out the other side. We also know from psychology this strange and I think deeply compassion-inducing fact, which is that when faced with behaviour from adults that is threatening, the child will often come up with interpretations in which they blame themselves. They make it their fault that they're at the receiving end of the behaviour that they're getting from the adult, who very often is someone upon whom they rely for their safety. So we choose things that get us through the situation and keep us so-called safe. We survive, and then we carry those assumptions with us into adulthood. So when we're doing the work that we do in thinking sessions, and I think this is an important thing for us to connect to as thinking partners, when we're doing that work and we're at that moment in the session, and I often feel an enormous amount of tenderness at this point in a session where we've asked the thinker, do you think that's true? When they've unearthed what they think is the key assumption that is standing in the way of this preferred future that they've articulated for themselves. And we ask them, do you think that's true? We're right there at that moment in one of those, what I would call existential moments of courage, where the thinker is facing whether or not to retain that security-based, survival-based assumption which they've utilised all their life, which has kept them going, but which has probably also kept them small and limited and constrained. And they're facing it now as an adult and making a new choice. And there's something so hugely celebratory and liberating, I think, when we hear someone say, no, it's not true. I'm not going to hold that as true for myself anymore, and here are my reasons why. And then we get to ask them, so if that's not true, what do you think is true and more liberating instead? And then we're there with someone else as they choose in that moment to liberate themselves and replace something untrue and limiting with something true and more liberating, and continue then to go on to be able to think about the ways in which they're going to accomplish this new future for themselves, looking through this lens that they've just created for themselves, this one of liberation.